Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Previously, we cross-examined some people relevant to the autopsy 10 years ago of Clint Van Zeeks, and about the ring that was found in the victim's stomach. It was the ring of Genshin Asogi, and that was the critical piece of evidence that captured the professor and got him into that whole mess. But we're thinking now that that was planted there during the autopsy while Yujin Mikotopa wasn't looking and was on the other side of the room fetching some materials. So now we're cross-examining Caden, I forget his full name, the warden at Barclay Prison, I believe, and also Daily Vigil over there, who was the person who helped the professor, Genshin Asogi, escape from prison. So, I don't have too much health left. Let's see if I can get this done, shall we?
It was the day that Japanese jock was found guilty. The directive came from the prosecutor's office.
Hold it!
And you say you don't know who actually issued the directive?
Aye, that's right. All I can be sure of is that it was official.
But if it was from the prosecutor's office, that narrows down who could have issued it straight away. And it wasn't me.
I can't even say with certainty that it did originate from the prosecutor's office.
What?
There's no telling where it started. There's a fair chance it came from higher up the ladder. Basically, I can't give you any indication of who was behind it.
You can't be serious. All we can say for sure is that the order must have come from somebody in authority, I suppose.
The likes of us on the ground, as it were, didn't bother with idle speculation. We just get the job done. I assigned the convict to the Chief Warder Vigil here and put the plan into action behind the scenes.
Hold it!
So, Mr. Vigil, you didn't know anything about it at all? That's right. My only role in the scheme was as a scapegoat. That's right, isn't it, Governor?
Some poor beggar had to take the rap for it.
Alright then, who else did know about the plan?
I've no the first idea, laddie. My part in the whole business was basically just dealing with the aftermath. I wouldn't be surprised if there were other folk in the prison service who'd been given similar orders.
So you don't know who else was involved?
Aye, that's right. All I can tell ya is that the night it actually happened, the person at the reins was Dr. Stevens.
Dr. Courtney Stevens, or Dr. Seath as she's known now. Why did I have to get caught up in such a terrible business? I was responsible for Asogi right up until the night of his execution, but I knew nothing of any plot. Well, you did turn a blind eye to him writing a last will and testament.
Hold it!
Did you not notice anything unusual happening in the lead up to that night? Oh, everything was unusual, exception after exception. After all, it was the professor. The man had terrorized the country as never before with his crimes. In order to hide his identity, he was forced to wear an iron mask over his head. Hideous treatment.
The fellow was surprisingly docile for someone who'd taken the lives of 5 of the country's nobles.
Being the chief warder, I was the only person permitted to approach his cell. I can still hardly believe that I was duped by my own country. I believe you jumped from the window of the governor's office when the jailbreak was blamed on you, didn't it? Didn't you?
Losh, Vigil. I can't apologize enough.
No, Governor, I don't believe you can. It won't change what's happened. What else can you tell us about the situation, Governor Caden?
Oh. I dinna ken if there were some negotiations between the convict and the prosecutor's office.
Hold it!
But you've already acknowledged the orders came from the prosecutor's office to arrange for the man's escape. There must have been some sort of negotiation. It's the only explanation.
Aye, well, be that as it may, I dinna ken nothing about that. The witness stand is no place for telling what you don't know for sure. I ken that much, I do.
And I presume you also know this. Not telling what you do know is a criminal offense. So you were just following orders, is that it? I'm afraid that won't absolve you of guilt here. A man was still killed illegally, even if he was a condemned criminal. You may very well be found complicit in murder, Governor. So that's what it's to be, is it? Even with the threat of conviction, you won't break your silence.
All I did was carry out my duty for Her Majesty's Great British Empire.
Hold it!
Did you carry out the plan in its entirety?
Aye, I did everything I could at the time.
As you know, Genshin Nasogi was shot dead in Lowgate Cemetery after the escape. Tell me, was that part of the plan too?
My instructions were to do with getting the jock out of the jail and nothing more. I can't tell you anything about what happened after that, only, personally, I believe his death was the last part of the plan.
Oh? Hello.
Excuse me!
Mr. Vigil, is something wrong? Ugh. Yes, sir. What can I do for you, sir? He's saluting now? What is it, some sort of Barclay convention? What Governor Caden was just saying seemed to upset you. Did it bring something to mind, perhaps? For the last 10 years, I've completely blotted out the memories of that time from my mind. I was betrayed by my superiors in the name of my country. Just as my father was betrayed, it seems. But you see, thinking back now, I really can't imagine that the shooting of Mr. Asogi in the cemetery was ever part of the plan. What makes you think that? Well, it just doesn't make sense, does it? To make the man admit to crimes he didn't commit with the promise of a jailbreak, only to kill him in the end. That's treachery of the worst kind, but the point is, if the intention was always to betray him, why would there be any need for all the chicaneries of an escape? You said it! You said the word chicanery! Go watch Better Call Saul, it's a good show. Yes, that's quite true. If whoever negotiated with Asogi never intended to keep his or her end of the bargain, it would have been far simpler just to let the man be executed in prison as dictated by his sentence. It all happened in that vast chamber of secrets that is Barclay, behind the high prison walls. I suppose nobody knows what really went on in the execution room now. Yes, it's an unsettling mystery, certainly.
Truth be told, there is a wee matter that's never quite made sense to me. If you believe there was some kind of negotiation behind the jailbreak between Asogi and the body at the top, it doesn't quite add up, does it?
Governor Caden, I must insist that you explain these doubts that you have by amending your formal testimony.
Good. Aye, go on then. It seems to me that the Japanese fella didn't have nothing to bargain with.
Ah, he had a weapon.
Hold
admitting to the crimes. That was what he had to bargain with, surely.
Can I see that myself? After all, did the prosecution now have conclusive evidence against the Carlier?
This, you mean, discovered during the final victim's autopsy. There's every possibility that this conclusive evidence was fabricated by Scotland Yard and the prosecutor's office.
Objection!
Possibilities are all very well, but nothing has been proven. You can holler about this misconduct in the trial 10 years ago all you like. But if you can't establish that it happened with hard evidence, no one's going to listen.
Aye, that's right. So what I'm saying is... the convict had nothing he could use for any kind of bargaining at all.
The witness makes an astute point. Logically, it would seem no negotiation could have taken place. And yet the plan to break the man out of prison was definitely put into practice. So he must have been armed with something that gave him an angle to negotiate. So Asogi-san agreed to confess to the crimes because he was assured he'd be broken out of prison later. I really don't think that Kazuma-sama's father would have engaged in such negotiations. Then perhaps something compelled him to agree. What a terrible thing, using the law to legitimize such underhand dealings with a desperate man, only to double-cross him in the end. It's quite the opposite of justice. I can't help feeling there's something about this apparent negotiation that doesn't quite add up. Something doesn't quite add up, Mr. Naruhodo. No, it doesn't. But I can't quite put my finger on what yet. Well, in that case, we must keep digging until we identify the problem. Okay, so it's always the amended statement. But hold on, I should see if it contradicts anything else here. The Japanese fella didn't have nothing to bargain with. Are you sure you knew nothing about the Sogi papers? I'm just gonna press this once more. Yeah, I don't think there's anything new. I forget the exact context, but somewhere in this series, there was a time I had to go back and press something after new information was revealed. I'm always like, in the back of my head, I'm paranoid about that moment, but it seems to me that the Japanese fella didn't have nothing to bargain with. Had something compromising. Let me read those papers just once more. Here. The weapon I have left. Everything about this seems innocuous, but nevertheless he described it as a weapon. Nothing to bargain with. Is there anything here that says something like Genshin knew something? I want to say it's got to be the Asogi papers. I don't think we've ever brought this up in this trial just yet. Well, with success. I know I went for this and got reprimanded for it, but I want to say now's the time. Genshin Asogi did not have anything to bargain with, and yet this evidence says that he had a weapon.
Objection!
Oh. Okay. Whew. confessing under oath to murders he didn't commit on a verbal assurance of later being broken out of prison. Genshin Isogi was taking an incredibly risky gamble. Very true. There was nothing to stop the British breaking their word and executing him behind closed doors anyway. Under normal circumstances, no man would stake his life on a gentleman's agreement like that. Which means that Mr. Isogi must have had a trump card. Something that guaranteed he wouldn't be betrayed. Some kind of weapon.
Heavers, the fellow couldn't possibly have anything like that.
But you know that he did, Governor. The Isogi Papers, the name given to the last will and testament of Genshin Isogi.
Oh.
It turns out that Mr. Isogi was hiding his will in his cell at Barclay. Chief Warder Vigil caught him with it one day.
You squealed, did ya, you wee rat? Did I not tell you to keep that a secret?
You can't touch me now.
Garg!
Can someone stop them? Bailiff? Hello? When Mr. Vigil caught sight of that will through the bars of the convict cell, Mr. Isogi pleaded with the warder. All right then, but what's on that paper? A last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now.
A weapon?
And after the convict had been killed following the elaborate pretense of the jailbreak, that document mysteriously disappeared, didn't it? Well, yes. All the prison warders searched through the belongings in his cell, but that will was just nowhere to be found. As I understand it, an exhaustive search was made for the document, which became known as the Isogi Papers. Governor Caden, I believe you ordered your prison staff to find it at all costs, didn't you?
Ugh.
Would I be right in saying that you knew? You knew that the so-called Isogi Papers had the potential to make great waves somehow?
James, what the blazes are you blithering about? The will was found, right and proper, in the fella's cell where I said it would be.
But how can that be? Where in his cell? We all searched the place from top to bottom.
Well, you didn't do a proper job, eh, you peely-wally galoot?
Peely-wally galoot. That's a new one. You can't criticize me now.
I showed it to you afore, did I know, young lawyer?
Yes, you did. I have the document here. It's written in Japanese and reads, "The Last Will and Testament of Genshin Isogi." Which means everything is as it should be. Not quite, my lord. You see, there's an undeniable inconsistency here. What? What inconsistency? Mr. Isogi described this document as the only weapon he had left. And yet this will contains nothing of significance at all. Nothing that would have given the convict any leverage. Are you suggesting, my learned friend, that the last will and testament stored at Barclay Prison all these years is actually a fake? You know what? I floated that idea a long time ago. I thought it didn't make much sense. As has clearly been demonstrated already, what went on at Barclay Prison was far from above board. That last vilification by the defense was an affront to the entire British legal system. This absurd notion of a weapon is something for which we have only the former Chief Warder's word. The man could quite easily be lying, or at the very least sorely mistaken. What? No, I definitely heard him say that, I swear. Clearly we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to know exactly what happened with these so-called Isogi Papers. A waste of time. If the will was fake, where is the real document?
Objection!
Mr. Vigil was stabbed in the back by the judiciary 10 years ago. He lost everything, very nearly his own life. And now you're going to do it again. You're ready to brand him a liar and turn your back on him without ever letting him defend himself. It's clear that Barclay Prison is hiding something. It's clear that the jailbreak was masterminded by somebody in the prosecutor's office. It's clear that some illicit negotiations took place. Is your lordship going to gloss over the obvious and reprehensible facts? What did you say? We should hear more from the chief order. Have him testify again. The trial must go on. The man's voice must be heard. It would seem that a vocal few here are utterly blind to the truth. Very well then, let the witness testify again. Tell the court precisely what you think you saw of the convict's last will and testament. Yes, sir, my lord. As the warder responsible for condemned convicts, I attended to Mr. Asogi and kept watch over his cell. The night after he was found guilty in court, he was doing something with that will in his cell. We turned the cell inside out looking for it after the execution, but to no avail.
I only found out about the Asogi papers when a directive came telling me to impound them. The document was in the folds of the fellow's robe that was left in his cell. A kimono, I think it's called.
Oh. In his kimono? That's a lie. We searched every inch of the man's cell. We looked through all of his clothes. It can't be true.
Were you no satisfied with calling me a liar the once, eh, you wee waffinger?
What the hell's a waffinger? There's nothing you can do about it now. You don't have any hold over me anymore. Other than the hold you like to take of my cravat, of course. Is that what you're going to do, is it? This animation looks really weird. Are you going to give me a good shake again? Are you too scared? There it goes. Okay, that makes sense. I'm not sure I've ever seen something like that before. Little and large, what a double act. We complied with Asogi's will as far as was possible. All of his personal effects were delivered to his family home in Japan. As a courtesy to the homeland of the most notorious killer our country has ever seen. And we were much obliged. I can confirm that all of my father's belongings arrived safely.
Aye, and you cannot deny the handwriting is that of your old man, eh?
Yes, there is no mistaking that it's my father's brushwork. Really? And this last will and testament was the man's last weapon, was it? I think we can safely assume that the convict was merely prattling, knowing that his end was nigh. I don't like it when he smiles. So, counsel for the defense, your cross-examination, please. Yes, my lord. As the warder responsible for condemned convicts, I attended to Mr. Asogi and kept watch over his cell.
Hold it!
So would that mean that you conversed with Mr. Asogi? Yes, certainly, though there was precious little time before his execution was due. He was remarkably calm, considering his days were very much numbered. In all honesty, he really didn't strike me as a man capable of mass murder. Yet he confessed in full to the crimes. I know, That's why I felt compelled to ask him one day. I can still recall his reply. I'm guilty of the unforgivable crime of ending another human's life, yes. But he was so tranquil and intelligent, it put me in mind of an Eastern holy man. And what about the will you saw him with? What can you tell us about that? It was the beginning of all the drama. I remember it very well, yes. The night after he was found guilty in court, he was doing something with that will in his cell.
Hold it!
And he pleaded with you not to report him, didn't he? Yes, that's right.
And like the bampot you are, you didn't tell me. A blatant breach of trust, that was.
I could see that the man had a noble spirit. I found myself wanting to treat him accordingly. But according to what you told us 2 days ago, the convict had been strictly forbidden from having any writing materials whatsoever. Yes, you're quite right. Ah, so when exactly was the will penned?
That was before the man was remanded in Barclay, obviously.
Yes, at the prosecutor's office under supervision of the relevant authorities. I personally instructed Asogi to make a will for the benefit of his family in his homeland. In that case, why was it found in his cell?
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, if it was penned at the prosecutor's office, you would have expected that it would remain there for safekeeping, surely.
Oh,
It's curious. There doesn't seem to be any obvious explanation for why it was subsequently found in the convict's cell.
oh, well.
The defense makes an astute point. Well, Governor?
A prison governor, can I be expected to ken the inner workings at the prosecutor's office?
In that case, Lord Stronhart, perhaps you can shed some light on the matter. I am unable to offer an explanation here and now. I would have to consult with the notary responsible for the will at the time. The fact that my father's will was discovered in his cell is clearly inconsistent with what he was expected. I want to know why. Another inexplicable mystery, then. Well, the thing is about that will. We turned the cell inside out looking for it after the execution, but to no avail.
Hold it!
It was the governor who ordered the search for the will, as I understand it. Is that right? Yes, and when I reported back that we couldn't find it, he grabbed me by the cravat and yelled, "It can have disappeared completely in my face."
Aye, well, it's due to the governor to keep everybody working as hard as they should.
I think the governor needs a wee taste of his own medicine, Mr. Naruhodo. The point is, it was clearly considered a very important document, wasn't it? But it proved impossible to find. That's right. Then before I knew it, it was in the morning paper, that blood-curdling article. The executed mass murderer who'd risen from the dead. Oh, you mean... The article based on Mr. Drebber's experience in Lowgate Cemetery. Yes, that was it. The day after I'd read that news, I was summoned to the governor's office. And that's when the awful accusation was made. That you'd aided Genshin Asogi to escape from the prison, resulting in your immediate dismissal. I'm afraid I really don't remember anything after that.
As the governor of the prison, I had no choice. I couldn't have done anything else. I only found out about the Asogi papers when a directive came telling me to impound them.
Hold it!
And that directive came from the same source as the one instructing you about the jailbreak.
Aye, from the top levels of the prosecutor's office.
What name was on it?
I dinna ken afore and I dinna ken now. All I can tell ya is that my orders were to do everything in my power to find that document. The directive said it had to be somewhere inside the fellow's cell.
Document? Was that the wording? Document, not will?
Aye, that's what it said.
Am I clutching at straws here? I just wonder if it was really Genshin Asogi's last will and testament that the sender of that directive was after. Continue with your testimony then, witness.
The document was in the folds of the fellow's robe that was left in his cell. A kimono, I think it's called.
Hold it!
In Mr. Asogi's kimono.
Aye, the one he'd brought with him when he was locked up.
Yes, he was permitted to have his personal effects with him during his incarceration, I understand.
That's right. He was granted as much freedom as possible during the few days before his execution.
Indeed, he had a number of items of personal significance, I remember. He was very reluctant to part with them. Some books, that kimono, his sword. Oh! So he parted with the kimono and then was later found in his cell? His sword! Karma, the famous sword of the Asogi clan. It bears the soul of my family. I don't doubt it, but I wasn't really getting at that. Forget it being the soul of the clan. Could the man have had a more obvious weapon? Have some respect, Ryunosuke. Respectful silence?
The warders carry firearms at all times, and the inmates have shackles around their ankles. He couldn't have hurt anybody with that thing.
Still, he was allowed a sword, but no writing materials?
Aye. He wrote that will before he came to stay with us at Barclay, you see.
Dr. Mikotopa was asked to bring the necessary Japanese writing implements to the prosecutor's office. A Susuri inkstone, black sumi ink, and some Hanshi rice paper, no doubt.
I was present when he wrote it, but I'm sorry to say the letters just look like a screwing mass of jet black earthworms to me.
I was wondering if this would come up. No friggin' way. No way. So, clearly Mr. Vigil has the problem with the color of the ink. It's gonna be red, isn't it? And that's gonna tie into the red ink stains found on Clint's hand. Oh my god. What does it mean? What does it mean?
Excuse me!
Are you feeling faint, Mr. Vigil? Mr. Vigil? Sir! It was Scarlet, sir! There. Oh my god. What the fuck? Was it written before? No. What if it was written by Clint? What? Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I didn't mean to blurt it out like that. Less swaying and more explaining would be helpful. Is it something about the testimony we just heard? Have you recalled something of importance? Something of importance. Possibly or possibly not. I'm unable to tell which way he's leaning, I'm afraid. My lord, the defense asks that Mr. Vigil be permitted to supplement his testimony with this possibly or possibly not important detail. Permission granted. Go ahead, Mr. Vigil. Yes, it was Scarlet. As I remember, the document was written in scarlet ink, but perhaps I'm mistaken.
Hold it!
Scarlet, you say? Well, yes, I mean, I only caught sight of it for a brief moment, of course. But even by the dim light in the cell, I remember thinking that it was an unusual color. At the very least, I'm quite sure it wasn't black. Witness, is that really what you saw? What? Sir! Is something wrong, Lord Strongheart? Ooh, he doesn't like this. I apologize. Continue. Ooh. What do you make of that, Mr. Naruhodo? For Lord Strongheart to be so visibly shaken in that way.
Oh, didn't I have her? You can plainly see the writing here, and it's as black as the Earl of Hell's waistcoat.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, yes, you're right. Mr. Vigil, I'd like to confirm one point with you. Did you actually see the content of the document that Mr. Asogi was holding that night? Oh, well, no, I mean, there was no time. As soon as he noticed me there, he hid it behind his back. But it was definitely a will, was it? Yes, it was. That's what Mr. Asogi told me. The court need waste no further time on this matter. We have the will in question in our possession. There is nothing more to add. A will written in scarlet ink. What did Mr. Vigil really see Kazuma's father holding, I wonder? If you have an inkling, Mr. Naruhodo, you must present it to the court at once. Boo! Boo, I say, boo! That testimony doesn't give much away. So this will really was penned by Kazuma-sama's father. I wonder what he could possibly have meant when he described it as a weapon. It's starting to sound very much like Mr. Asogi actually had nothing. But the plan to break him out of jail went ahead, which means he must have had some bargaining power. He must have been hiding something. It's the only explanation that makes sense. It's starting to sound like Mr. Asogi actually might have had something. Which is it, Mr. Naruhodo? I'm not sure, but I feel as though I'm on the brink of understanding all this. Let's listen to all the information again and see what more we can learn. We can't overlook even the smallest detail. Absolutely. All right. Scarlet ink. Then this must mean that Genshin was not the man who wrote it. Clint Van Zeek's autopsy report. Additional notes. Recent scarlet ink stains visible on the little and ring fingers of the right hand. Exactly what would happen if you were writing. No document in corresponding ink was found. Here we go! Oh, time to blow the lid off this case, I think. Here we go.
Objection!
Scarlet-colored writing is what you said you thought you saw, Mr. Vigil. And I believe that's exactly what you did see. What?
Hammers again. You've no...
Oh, son of a bitch. I ask you, how did this whole mess begin? Redheads. And I was so certain that it was, you know, that famous Sherlock Holmes story, A Study in Scarlet. Oh. All along, it really is just a matter of Scarlet. Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
Hammers again. You've no evidence to say that.
Have a look at this report. That's my brother's autopsy report. Yes, and there's something in here that's bothered me since I first read it. It states that scarlet-colored ink stains were noted on the fingers of the victim's right hand. Yes, so it does. Scarlet ink? Now, I'm not familiar with the habits of the British aristocracy, I freely admit, but I would hazard a guess that they don't all go around with ink stains on their fingertips, do they? Your wit is not appreciated. My brother was a well-bred and fastidious man. Should ink have sullied his fingertips, he would have cleaned them immediately.
What is your point, counsel?
My point is this. Whatever Lord Clint Van Zieks was writing in that unusually colored ink, it must have been directly before his death. Because he died before he had the opportunity to clean his hand.
What?
I remember something troubled me at the time. At the scene, the lid of my brother's inkwell was open. But Clint was punctilious about such things. It seemed unusual. And no document penned in the color of the ink that was in the inkwell was ever found. So the document had disappeared. Are you suggesting that the document my father had in his hand that night in his cell was the same document that Lord Clint Van Zieks was writing moments before his death? Then it was. If Mr. Vigil's testimony is to be believed, it can only mean that, yes. Mr. Vigil. Sir! When you spotted Mr. Asogi with the document in his cell, his precise words were as follows, were they not? All right then, but what's on that paper?
A last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now.
A last will and testament.
Oh!
If the conversation really did go as Mr. Vigil says, then what we now know completely changes the meaning of what Mr. Asogi said. It's not Asogi's will. It's Clint's. You really think... Mr. Vigil did indeed see the convict with a will, but it wasn't that of Genshin Asogi. It was the last will and testament of Lord Clint Van Zieks. No. What?
Ooh.
Objection!
This is madness. My brother's last will and testament. That would mean that he had chosen to die. That is what it would mean, yes. No, impossible. That is utterly out of the question. Lord Van Zieks. Clint was pursuing the professor. It consumed him day and night. Whatever happened, he would never have abandoned his investigation before its conclusion. Never. He wouldn't rest until the job was done, until the killer was caught. The idea that he would willingly accept his own death, it's obscene.
Objection!
And yet, we can be sure that he was writing his will moments before his death. And that Genshin Asogi came to be in possession of that document. So what could the will possibly have contained? Clearly something that couldn't be made public under any circumstances whatsoever. Because armed with that document, my father was able to negotiate with the judiciary for his life. It was something so damning that it prompted the powers that be to enact the daring jailbreak plot. Yes, there can be no question that the will contained information of the utmost secrecy. Information of the utmost secrecy? Oh! No, it couldn't be.
I've heard more than enough. Pursuing this notion of a phantom will nobody can attest to having seen serves absolutely no purpose.
Objection!
No, my lord, that's unacceptable.
What did you say, counsel?
The last will and testament that Genshin Asogi had in his possession was that of Lord Clint Van Zieks. All the testimony and evidence presented to the court has logically led us to that as a possibility. We have a duty to pursue the line of reasoning to its conclusion.
But with no possible means of knowing the contents of the document, there is no line of reasoning to pursue.
A reason why Lord Clint Van Zieks, a man of high noble standing, would have chosen death. Information so secret, people in the judiciary would be willing to negotiate the jailbreak of a condemned killer. The only explanation that fits those facts is the unthinkable truth that turns absolutely everything on its head. But it's just too hideous. Mr. Naruhodo, however difficult the situation might have become, you work with your client in pursuit of the truth. That's what you resolved to do when you entered the courtroom this morning, if I'm not mistaken. Miss Susato. So hold your head high and keep soldiering on. Yes, you're right. 10 years ago, in his final moments, Lord Clint Van Zieks left behind a will. A will that Genshin Asogi was able to use as a weapon to negotiate his escape from prison. In all probability, the details in the will were related to the Professor case.
The defense's last statement is mere conjecture.
What are you getting at, man? Ryunosuke? As soon as these words come out of my mouth, there's no going back. I believe that the last will and testament of Lord Clint Van Zieks was in fact
An accusation.
That's exactly my thought. I think Clint worked out the identity of, well, not the Reaper, that term hadn't been coined yet, but the true killer. That confession? That whole deal about Genshin Asogi holding it against people to bargain for his safety? It's blackmail. I think the only actual reason it could be is that the actual will of Clint Van Zieks reveals the identity of a criminal in the highest seats of British law. I think it's an accusation against Male Strongheart in particular, but I think it's an accusation. Obviously, it must have been an accusation. An accusation. Yes, revealing the true identity of the Professor.
Which would explain why Asogi took it, since it was he who was implicated by the document.
Objection!
No. In that case, the will wouldn't have given Mr. Asogi any bargaining power at all.
Then you're suggesting the accusation was against some other person.
Objection!
No, if that were the case, the two men would surely have collaborated to pursue the culprit together. Uh-oh.
Then your whole argument falls down.
Ag! Uh-oh. Okay. Can I object to the penalty too?
It's apparent that the defense's explanation has no real substance. This line of inquiry is dead.
Come on, Ryunosuke, I know you. You've seen to the heart of all this, haven't you? A reason my Lord Clint Van Zieks, yeah. All right. What if Clint Van Zieks was himself the killer, the professor? After all, okay, yeah. If Clint was the killer, that would in fact turn everything on its head. And what's more, I'm suddenly remembering, yeah, wasn't there a, very jewel-studded dog collar? Just like very exquisite that I would think only a noble could afford. I think it's a confession. I think it might be this. Hopefully. Here we go. You can do this, Mr. Naruhodo. I believe that what Lord Clint Van Zieks actually penned that day was a confession. A confession. Regarding the mass murderer known as the Professor. And his true identity.
Objection!
Enough, Counsel. What are you saying? Do you even realize? A confession about the true identity of the Professor? That would mean... Lord Van Zieks, I appreciate this must be hard to take in. But it's the only explanation that fits. The killer that terrorized London a decade ago and became known as the Professor. The man believed to have been murdered, to have murdered 5 members of the aristocracy. Wasn't Genshin Asogi at all. No, you can't be suggesting. It was in fact the man believed to have been the 5th victim. Lord Clint Van Zieks himself. Oh, he doesn't like that. It's finally open, is it? Pandora's box. Ooh. The great Van Zieks family, they've been thoroughbreds of the British Judiciary for years. Lord Clint Van Zieks, he was a paragon of justice in the capital. But he was actually a mass murderer? A perpetrator of atrocities of the vilest nature? If the general public ever found out, law and order in this country would... My brother. Oh, this is too awful. Poor Lord Van Zieks. I wonder, though, did he never suspect? Mr. Naruhodo? Lord Barak Van Zieks is a brilliant prosecutor. Is it conceivable that he didn't realize what his older brother really was?
Order! Order! Order in court!
Lord Van Zieks. The Professor made use of an enormous hound as his murder weapon. Tell me, did your brother own a dog? Yes, he did. Balmun. He was a well-known hunting dog. People called him a giant. I don't believe this. When my brother would go hunting in the forest of the grounds behind the house, he always took Balmun. That's from like Norse mythology, wasn't it? Something to do with that. After Clint's death, the creature passed away too, almost as if he were following his master. He was a magnificent hunting dog, worthy of the jewel-studded collar around his neck. Okay. That really cinches it. A jewel-studded collar. That's right. Though, sadly, some years ago now it was stolen by a thief who broke into the house one night. A jewel-studded collar, stolen by a thief. It so happens that myself and my colleagues have come across such a collar during our time in London. How could you? There was an old emblem attached to the collar too, made of pure gold. It was topped with a small crown and bore an ornate capital letter B. Oh, B for Balmun. What? An emblem bearing the initial B. Oh my, you know it? It's the insignia of the Baskerville family. Oh, okay. What? The Baskerville? Why is that name coming up now? Baskerville is the family name of my late brother's widow. That pure gold emblem was an heirloom which Clint acquired upon their marriage. There can be no doubt, then, the collar you've described was Balmun's. The family insignia of Lord Clint Van Zieks' widow. There was a considerable amount of blood on the collar when we saw it. Since we know the dog was used for hunting, it could have been from its quarry, of course. But it could equally have been from human prey. So it is true, then? Clint Van Zieks really was the professor. Impossible. These Japanese are making it all up to exonerate their own. So in fact, the person responsible for these murders of nobles and royals was a noble himself. And that threatened to be an enormous scandal that would irrevocably destabilize British society. My father knew that, and was using it to negotiate his way out of his unjust charges brought against him. But at the very last hour, those he'd bargained with betrayed him, slaying him mercilessly on foreign soil. Well, can you deny it, Lord Stronheart? 10 years have passed, and still now the 6 million inhabitants of our great capital rest easy believing that justice was done. That though his anonymity remains, the diabolical murderer was caught and executed. Very well then, you may have the truth. Ooh, promise? Tell me then. Tell me what Clint really was. Lord Clint Van Zieks was too pure of heart. When he became a prosecutor and went in pursuit of the black roots of crime, he drove himself into a corner. He came to the uncomfortable realization that to fight the most fiendish of criminals requires one to become even more fiendish oneself. Clint. The 19th century was a truly miraculous 100 years for Great Britain, and indeed the whole world. New industry, new technology, and with the birth of the Metropolitan Police Service, new law and order. But these dazzling new developments meant even deeper shadows were cast on society. Water sullied by factories, air thick with noxious fumes and crime, growing daily to fill the darkness. Lord Clint Van Zieks made it his mission to combat that darkness. But as time went on, it slowly ate at his soul, until eventually he was consumed. It's ironic, really, and somewhat surprising, that the truth has once again been unearthed. By a Japanese. Once again? What do you mean? 10 years ago, your father, Genshin Asogi, turned up at my office one night. The professor? Yes, beyond all shadow of doubt. We must issue a warrant to search his home at once. Don't be absurd. That man comes from one of the country's most illustrious families. He's a paragon of justice here in the capital. Yes, that's the point. That's why none of you British can see it. He's using his noble status as a diversion whilst he commits these atrocious crimes behind the scenes. Atrocious, sorry. Do you have evidence? Nothing definitive as yet, but he keeps an enormous savage hound on the estate. We need that full support of the judiciary for this. We're up against a member of the aristocracy. So a large family estate has a fierce guard dog. You should know that's commonplace here in Britain. I'm sorry, but I can't possibly put Scotland Yard onto this based on the tenuous accusation of his visiting student. So I turned down Asogi's plea. And as a result, he took it upon himself to visit the Van Zieks mansion on his own. We can only imagine now what happened between the two men. Though we know the outcome of the course, Lord Clint Van Zieks perished. I don't believe this.
So, in actual fact, Kazuma-sama's father did.
He made the late Lord Van Zieks meet the same fate. He put a permanent end to the professor's killings by taking the drastic measure of ending the perpetrator's life. As soon as I hurried to the mansion. When I arrived, it was easy to grasp what had happened. And what about the will? Asogi must have already taken it. Nothing of that nature was found at the scene. We had no idea of the existence of such a document at that time. Oh. I wonder... Genshin must have held Clint at sword point and forced him to write a confession, then killed him, and kept the paper safe with him as a bargaining chip, maybe. I was the only person who knew of the true identity of the professor. So, I resolved to keep it a secret and to guard the secret to the bitter end.
So you're admitting to it, that you were behind it all?
It was you, then, who pinned the crimes on my father. I did what needed to be done in order to protect the law and order of the British Empire. Even if that meant employing an unforgivable ruse.
Then it was you who arranged this fabricated evidence?
I ordered that detective to take care of it, whilst keeping the truth from him, naturally.
Gregson.
Obviously, he opposed me at first.
Are you off your rocker? You can't do something like that.
There's no question that it was Asogi who murdered Lord Van Zieks. The house staff have made statements that they saw the man running from the mansion that night.
Yes, well, I've no doubt it was that Japanese fella. But we haven't got a shred of conclusive evidence against the man. And worse than that, he doesn't keep a dog, so we're short of a murder weapon to boot.
And we're short on time, Gregson. We must put a stop to this man's rampage for the good of the country.
So I'll use whatever means necessary. Do I make myself clear, Detective?
Blimey. So that night 10 years ago, when I was attacked by those thugs in the back streets, and Genshin's ring was taken, that was him, was it? That was Gregson and some hired help. Then the detective handed the stolen ring to Dr. Wilson, who feigned his discovery from the victim's stomach during that autopsy. And in the light of that decisive evidence, Mr. Asogi was found guilty of the charges brought against him. However, behind the scenes, he had actually already struck a deal with his accusers, in which he agreed to silently accept the charges. But I just don't believe that part. As far as I knew the man, my father despised such underhand dealings.
It was extremely easy to make him comply. You see, he had one crippling weakness.
What weakness?
Isn't it obvious? You, Kazuma Asogi.
Me?
Perhaps you have no desire to return to your homeland, Asogi.
What?
Though I hear you have a 14-year-old son. Agree to cooperate and accept your guilt without contention, and you will see Japan and your son again.
You scoundrel.
Whether you choose wisely or not, it will be a closed trial by order of Her Majesty. So whatever rash claims you might make in court will have no trouble in stifling them. There's only one outcome for you, Asogi. The gallows.
Don't forget that I still have a weapon at my disposal. A document revealing a truth that I know we are desperate to keep hidden.
Yes, it hadn't escaped my mind, which is the only reason I'm willing to bargain with you. I only want to protect this country's law and order, you understand? So, what's it to be, Asogi?
Kazuma. He did it for me.
And as I told him at the time, my motive was simply to protect Britain from the damage the truth would do. To protect this country's law and order at any cost.
Objection!
I've never dared let myself even consider this possibility until now. But in the light of all this treachery, I have to ask. The mastermind behind the Reaper of the Bailey. Was it you, Lord Mael Stronheart?
A rather brilliant idea, wouldn't you say, Lord Barak Van Zeeks?
Did he just admit it? What the fuck?
That the spirit of your late brother, that paragon of justice...
Okay, that. Okay, so he started the rumor.
Okay, should return to reap justice for his sibling. Could there be a more appetizing tale for London's masses, I ask you?
What? What brazen?
I knew that you'd play the part to perfection, but your role really wasn't that of some embodiment of death. No, you were London's guardian angel of death.
An angel with bloody hands? I think not.
Those who had cooperated with me already were only too happy to participate in my plan. Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson. My minions worked tirelessly to ensure that the finger of guilt could never come to rest on you. It's all thanks to them that you were exalted as the demigod the Reaper became.
But Dr. Wilson left Britain 4 years ago when he was invited to work in Japan.
That's right. So I had to employ the services of his young protege after that. Dr. Courtney Seath.
Dr. Seath?
So what with the execution of the professor and the subsequent reign of the Reaper of the Bailey, I've successfully safeguarded law and order in our mighty capital for the past decade. That is everything.
No, it is not. The Reaper is an actual killer. Who's the one ordering these assassins around?
My lords, ladies, and gentlemen, I do hereby confess, it was I who sired the concept of the Reaper. However, let me say in my defense, it was all for the preservation of law and order across the entire empire.
Lord Strongheart did it? An unforgivable collection of crimes, but still. All those who died at the Reaper's hands were rotten to the core anyway. It was all in aid of keeping London safe. I think I'm gonna have to end it here. I think this might be the best time to do it. So I'm a bit confused. I thought he was just admitting to starting the rumor of the Reaper, but it seems he just now did go through with admitting that he orchestrated the killings too to keep up the charade. Because the crowd was just talking about, oh, all those deaths justified in keeping the land safe. Okay, that's a bit odd. Maybe I missed something, but So, yeah, no, wow. I think the very next video we do here might just be the finale. I can tell maybe one last final push and then the whole aftermath, the farewells, the sad times, the credits. I think it's feeling a lot like the next video could be the finale. Holy crap. Oh man, one way or another, when I record tomorrow, I'll have to prepare mentally to maybe record a 3-hour session and maybe split it up afterwards. Oh. Yeah, I think tomorrow I'll finish this game and maybe see how the episodes get doled out after the fact, but wow. So Clint Van Zieks was the professor. He became the Punisher, really. Extrajudicial murders of criminals he perceived to be who evaded the law. Criminals who thought they were above justice. And he went and killed them with a dog as the weapon. Huh. So it's like, we got the peanut gallery here all kind of going, oh, it's a Strongheart fella, he's alright, he did those killings, he orchestrated those killings for good purposes, that's fine. I assume next time Ryunosuke will have to be like, no, people, what the fuck is wrong with you? He's a mastermind of assassins, he's completely circumnavigating the law to do extrajudicial murders, he's a murderer and hire of assassins. He had people killed, had Gregson killed, probably. What the hell? Oh. Well, yeah, one way or another, Pandora's box is open, but we all know what lies at the very bottom, the last thing to be found, erupting from Pandora's box. Hope. Hope for a brighter future. And you know, it kind of is funny that they're bringing up Pandora's box, you know, from Greek mythology. Much like, you know, Phoenix and Apollo. Kind of do like that, how this is ending that way, with one little callback. Oh, well. This game has given me a lot to think on, so in the meantime, I'm Zephyr the Jester. This has been more The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you next time. So until then, please take care.